basically you're a high paid doctor, then you got fired, right?
Kind of, yeah.
Describe yourself as an employee. I mean, looking back at that, I mean, you're a little younger.
Yeah, the interesting thing is it was like a transformation because when I was when you're in medical school and when you're in residency, um, in order to succeed, you have to be, I mean, honestly, you really do. And I'll just be honest, you blatantly have to be a massive butt kisser, right? You just have to kiss butt. And the more you kiss butt, the better you will do when you're on the wards, as a medical student, when you're a resident. It's just this massive hierarchical thing. And so I was quite good at ass kissing. I was quite good.
What you put your mind to, you
Huh?
do, right?
Yeah, what? Yeah,
What you
yeah,
put your mind to.
exactly. I mean, I was a dedicated ass kisser. And I don't, for me at the time, I think what I was just thinking is, hey, it's a means to an end, right? I mean, I know these people influence my career, and so I'm going to make them like me. I know what I need to do in order to get, good grades, and I know what I need to do to, be liked. In residency, actually, I have to say that what happened was pretty quickly, I wasn't a very good resident because in medical school, I was good at the butt kissing, but I think I burned out. I burned out on butt kissing by residency. And I actually started to become who I really am, which is a horribly unemployable individual. And I think that's where it really started, is just feeling like I just didn't like working for anybody else. And, and so that was a major driving force behind me ultimately that, that led to where I am. And sometimes getting fired, which I did, from my first job about 9 months in, is like the best thing that could happen. I got fired because of disagreements with management. I was working for a big company, and they had, the person who was overseeing me was like, her last job was as a manager at like one of these major hair salons, like Vidal Sassoon or Mario Cicosi or something like that. And I couldn't believe I had to like answer to
And
this
you guys
lady.
make a lot more than, right? Than
What?
you make a lot more than those guys, right? As
Oh
doctors.
yeah. I mean, over the office manager. Yeah. I mean, I was making about $500,000 and maybe she was making 50, 60, but she technically had like some ability to boss me around, and I didn't like it. And ultimately she reported corporate and blah, blah, blah. And they made up these stories about how I was going to start my own practice in Khabib. And I was asked to leave at that point, but that was actually a really, really good thing for me. I think part of the problem with high paid professionals in general and good students, and you were one of them too, Lane. So you'll get this. You get in a habit of success, right? You get in a habit of getting A's, and when you get A's, people think you get this positive feedback. It's almost like a Pavlovian loop, and so you want more of it, and you want more success, and you want more A's. And you want people to tell you what to do. You do it, and you're like this panting dog that's wagging its tail, and you get into that cycle. And so it's very, very difficult to break out of that on your own, by your own decision, to all of a sudden say, hey, I'm going to stop doing this and I'm going to take a risk at failing and doing something on my own. So sometimes it's easier if somebody kicks you out and makes you do it, and you're in free fall and you're like, whoa, I kind of like this. And that's what happened to me.
Oh, yeah. I actually had a similar experience. I never really talked about it in the podcast, but I'll go ahead and tell you this now. But not going to go into the details since they'll probably send me a nasty letter. But I was working for this big company too, and I was working them slaving away for like 8 years, traveling on the road for like 5 years straight. Living in hotels, and I got put in this $120 million project. And one of my, there was kind of a precedent setting. I really don't want to go into the details. I'll tell you another day, Buck. But basically I wrote like an email a wrong way saying something was this way and it wasn't. And they brought me in, one day I get this Outlook invite with HR, and then, they bring me in with my manager who, is just one of those pleasers,
Oh,
younger
he
people
knows.
poised for higher growth,
Right.
and the director and the HR person. And I'm like, oh, okay, I know where this is going. It's one of those, hey, you got 90 days to get your stuff together or we're going to fire you. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I've been here for 8 years. I'm actually pretty good at this stuff. What the heck did I do, right? And it was
Yeah.
all because of that, that questionable email that I sent. There was
So they
nothing.
put you on like probation or something?
Yeah, yeah. And you know what it is like, when something like that goes out and there's precedent setting with other legal matters and they have to separate you from the company, right? And I'm like, okay. Because in the meeting, I'm like, generally want to help out, right? Like, I'm like,
Right.
okay, what is it that I need to improve on? Can you give me any specifics? And they're like, I'm like, okay, I got it. That's cool. Thanks for the pro.
Well, let me ask you this, because this is pretty classic, right? I mean, you were an A student, were you? Or it might be more like a B or C
More
student.
like a B student, yeah.
Okay, well, so that's probably why you're actually an entrepreneur, right? So, because you actually occasionally failed, right? I didn't,
Yeah,
but that feeling that you get when somebody is scolding you, right? It's almost sort of like, it's like getting a bad grade in school, right?
right,
Let me tell you didn't do something right. It's a terrible feeling, right? And we want very much to avoid that kind of feeling. That's what keeps us driven, to perform and continue to, to please. We're trained to be pleasers, right? That's what we are at school. Think about it. The whole school system that we have, uh, it is so the school system that we have, the 12 grades and all that. So this was something that was created back during the Industrial Revolution, and if you think about the way that this thing is set up, it's almost like a conveyor belt, right? You go first grade, plop, second grade, plop, and you get information at each one of those stations. And then 12 stations later, you have this final product. Of course, some people fall off the conveyor belt. They don't make it. So, and then some products are, come out a little bit nicer and they go on, for a little finish in the form of professional school. But it's, it's a very stereotype kind of school system that we have. And we are all sort of programmed. We're all like robots that come out of that, and we just try to absorb, and we try to, and we're told that if we can absorb this stuff, that's success. And so it's difficult to have these kind of different life situations outside of that, because you're not used to, all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, tell me what to do better. Because in school they could tell you what to do better, right? You got a math problem wrong, get it right next time, Lane, right? But you can't do that anymore. It's very frustrating.
right. And that same emotion comes up, right? You get angry, right? You got angry.
Yeah, you get very angry, and then you can't do anything about it because you don't want to get fired, right? And that's the worst feeling, because it's like you're like a well-paid man in a cage.
Yeah, and you're like these
Terrible.
bozos. Like, at the time I had a couple rentals, and it all became super clear. I was like, what is this bozo telling me to do? I make more than them.
I know, it's terrible. It's terrible, and I think I think that's one of the things that I couldn't deal with is, and listen, I know there's plenty of people out there who are just happy with their gig, and good for you. I mean, it actually is not a blessing to be unemployable. It's, I have been lucky in that my entrepreneurial stuff has gone well for me, and I make a lot more money than I would have as an employee. But on the other hand, sometimes I look and think, this is kind of a curse, right? I mean, think of all these people seem to be pretty darn happy, just, going to work and clocking in, clocking out.
Right.
It's
I